Archbishop Fulton Sheen once said that he knew the year that each of his priests got ordained just by looking at their library. That because the year they got ordained, they never bought another book. And yet I think there's oftentimes a lot of truth to that. Oftentimes I run across people who said, well, I went to Catholic school for 8-12 for college. And after I got done with that, I never looked at a theology or opened up the Bible ever again. I knew it all. And they miss out then. They become stagnant. And when you become stagnant, you are basically resting. You're not doing anything, which is the opposite of what Jesus is asking, to say to love your Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And yet, as he prepares and says to people, that's what you should do, they immediately stop doing that because no one dared to ask him any more questions. I thought, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, if you think about any politician going on a press conference, they're always asking them questions. The politician has to eventually say, no, I'm done, and leave. Otherwise, they'd be there all day. But here, when no one dares to ask him any more questions, no one's more curious to ask Jesus to say, what am I supposed to do? And more than that, he says to this guy, you're not far from the kingdom of God. Well, let's put it in sports terms. The football team is not far from the finish line, or the goal line, I should say. Well, wouldn't you want to know how to get to the rest of the way? Wouldn't you want to know how to get into the kingdom of God? And so it's not just saying, okay, I'm good enough. I know enough stuff. You want to learn more. Your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. Same is true with sin, overcoming sin. Not to say, well, okay, I didn't commit any mortal sins today. Whoopee. Then go down to the venial sins. They'll go down into the attitudes which lead to the venial sins, which lead to the mortal sins. To say that I'm going to continue to strive to follow the Lord, to practice virtue. And as a matter of fact, the same is true for our neighbor. To not just say, well, I gave a couple bucks to the food pantry and I'm good. What more can I do? It is not to say that there's ever say, I'm good enough. Instead, to keep striving. And as we strive, we encountered Christ all the more. This past week, I was at one of the classrooms, and they asked me an interesting question. What have you learned lately, and how has it changed you? And thankfully, I knew that question right away, because I was studying the liturgical year. Believe it or not, I'm not going to discuss that. That's going to kind of far afield, but at least I had an answer. At least I'm still growing. It is a wonderful thing to learn more about your faith, learn more about God. That's the blessing. I know that I'm a better person than I was last year. That's the blessing. That's where I encounter God. I know that I've encountered more people and more of my neighbor than I did last year, and that's the blessing. That's where I encounter God. As Jesus invites us to never give up, to worship the Lord with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, it requires everything from us. We can never just say it's good enough. But in that striving, we encounter Christ in return and are filled with joy because we are coming close to the kingdom of God.